This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're logging in. Lots of wishes. Welcome to the first of the QDB webinar series, which is supported by the Qatar Development Bank and is a part of the Qatar branch events. Thank you for so much for joining us in a very crucial phase, possibly towards the end of the year as we look forward. Also looking forward to continual engagement and a lot of things happening around with procurement, supply chain. And It's my complete pleasure to have this kind of a webinar with a focus on procurement of IT services, specifically for me and in general, hopefully for everybody. IT has been always a dodgy category for me, both as a category as well as a service. There's so much that goes behind IT services, procurements, more about technologies. And I would say that knowing Zeeshan, one of the good speakers, one of the good experienced professionals who started with basic logistics, who have started out with projects in technology and procurement supply chain and building up all the technology procurements for the last 15, 20 years across the MENA region, traveling across the world. Currently, Zeeshan is the regional procurement head for Motorola. I would want Zeeshan to come on board and explain his journey, introduce himself, his highs, his lows, and share his experiences and take the session through. Please feel free to share your thoughts on the chat box. Also share your questions specifically on the Q&A. Zeeshan, if you can just take over, please.
Hey, thank you, Harry. Thank you very much for the brief intro. First of all, thank you to QDB and CIPS in organizing all these learning sessions. It really adds a lot of value, and I believe it is something which is needed and required for our profession to take it to the next level where we all want it to be in future. To begin with, I'm gonna just quickly give you a brief and add on to what Harry just did in the introduction side. So I've been in the profession, started from the logistics and supply chain role back in 2004. I've been 18 years in the technology space, specifically IT and telco sector. Plus, I've worked with a lot of SMEs within the region, and definitely with quite a lot of Fortune 500 companies as well. Currently, as Harry mentioned, I'm working as a regional procurement manager for Middle East and Central Asia region for Motorola Solutions based in Dubai. It's an honor to be a part of this journey with CIPS and QDB, and hope that all the illustrations and explanations, what I will try to share with the audience today, will add value in your day-to-day operations and also whenever you're procuring any IT services. So I'm just gonna head into it. Harry, if everything is okay, should I just jump in with the presentation?
Yes. Yeah, just a bit sound. I think if you can
is
just
the sound okay?
Or closer.
Right. So I believe I'm a bit far.
Yes.
Is it better now?
Perfect.
Perfect. Right. So what I've tried to do and capture in the slides, what we're going to review today, is first we're going to touch base on outsourcing as a service. What does it mean? What are the blockheads, or what are the challenges what we face, not only internally but also from the external stakeholders? That's going to be the first part of the presentation, and then I'm going to go in detail in terms of distinction of IT procurement and IT services as procurement, because I believe that's the fundamental distinction has to be there in order for all of us to understand where we can add value and how both the segments needs to be looked at. So moving on, where we can actually take it up is, let me see if the slides are being changed. Yes, it is. Right. So outsourcing challenges. I think we all understand from the concept of what outsourcing brings on the table, but also we have some challenges associated to that. One of the biggest one, what we see from the professions or the professionals is basically the increasing procurement outsourcing will affect their jobs. This is one of the fundamental challenges what any procurement profession thinks about it when it comes to discussions related to outsourcing. Yet we also believe that there are organizations who think that procurement being a fundamental part of the organization, and as it hits the bottom line of the organization, it is mostly challenged that should procurement services be outsourced or should it be kept in-source? Now, this is a debate which keeps on happening and circling around within the organization and executives in order to understand and get a wider view towards what values it can bring to the organization if it is outsourced. And then again, the question comes, what needs to be outsourced? That's pretty much the basics of how it needs to be structured when we are actually trying to explore the opportunities around us. When we talk about IT and technology, there was a very nice post I read. It was on LinkedIn by Sam, and he really nicely put it up that people think about digitization when they start using Google spreadsheets and sharing information on Google. But that, let me tell you that that's not digitization, and that's not where the digitalization starts when it comes to procurement and ERPs related to improvement in our processes, what it can bring. So what we have to understand is all these logos, what you see on the screen right now, these are basically the ERPs and softwares which are readily available in the market. You've got SAP, you've got iValua, you've got Coupa, you've got Tealbooks. Now these applications are basically related to the ERPs. Now this is a very interesting study. What I've found is that the growth market when it comes to the ERPs and the software market, which can help us improve our day-to-day operations, starting from the procurement request forms, what gets generated by the stakeholders, and reaching towards the award, and then later down contract management and performance management for the subcontractors or suppliers, that can all be attributed or included within the applications and ERPs. Now, this does not mean that, why I'm trying to highlight this information is because we need to have a clear distinction between IT procurement as a service, which I'm going to elaborate moving down in the slides, and then IT procurement softwares, which basically helps us to improve our day-to-day operations in terms of having the complete data sorted in one of the applications, and then having a complete visibility when the information was requested and how it got progressed, who are the partners or the suppliers got invited, and how the award was functioned, whether it was a technical analysis, whether it was a commercial analysis, moving on towards the award and the contract and the performance management. Now, all these can be done on an ERP, on a software, right? But before getting into the technology aspect of it and investing in the technology, what are the informations I think that are critical for a buyer, for a procurement manager, or a VP level or a CPO is basically to understand how much have we developed before any tool is introduced, what practices are being used within the organization, is the stakeholder or are the stakeholders, we've got their buy-in, because we understand sales, we understand project management, we understand pre-sales and post-sales, and we know that they've got a lot of information, what they're doing, and a lot of activities, what they're doing day in, day out. Now, adding another milestone to their activities when they have to approach procurement, that really pushes them back. So this basically starts, and my personal experience says that it has to be a top-down driven strategy where the management mandates and the buy-in from the executives are there before any procurement function can evolve. Again, I'm talking specifically related to the technology evolvement within your function and how your day-to-day operations can be automated, right? So to start with, you need to understand how much have we developed before any tool is introduced. I touched that earlier now again, that what is the buy-in from the internal stakeholders? Do we have commitment from the sales, pre-sales, post-sales, our project managers? Do they really understand the value or do they really understand based on the quality of information, what they input in the request forms, what we receive, and how it gets generated throughout the course of sourcing activities, what we do. And then, uh, I mean, this is not in any order. This is basically just random in terms of how we can make that change when a tool is introduced and how we can get the buy-in. And if the directives or mandates are from the top executives, it really makes it easier for procurement to take it down to the pre-sales, to your post-sales, to your stakeholders, and actually explain it to them. What benefits does it bring? How we can avoid challenges? What are the informations we need when you're requesting any services or any equipment or any hardware to be procured, and what level of information to be provided into that? Now, this is just a brief towards the technology side. I'm going to step into the actual topic of today, which is procuring IT services for SMEs. IT as in a service. I labeled that as PROS, which is procurement as a service. Now, this is something which I found really interesting, just to illustrate where we were as in procurement when as in IT services, where we are today, what has changed, and where we can improve in future. Now, what's important over here is just to understand that, I mean, as procurement as a service landscape, right? The service providers manages the interconnected elements: service, people, technology, and the architecture, all unified as a service. What is important for us to understand when we talk about IT services as procurement as procuring as IT services, and what companies are a good fit to be enrolled in the PRAS framework. Companies, those who have tight expense budgets, but not capital expenditure budgets, right? Have extensive change management approval processes, but still want to address efficiency. Now, these are some of the key elements where you need to understand whether outsourcing IT services specifically will add value. Do we have enough competency internally within our buying organization? Do they understand the technical skill set required to negotiate with the vendors, with the technology vendors? Now, if we distinct between the two major sectors, so you've got SMEs at one end and you've got the Fortune 500 companies at the other end. What I've seen in my experience is that in SMEs, we do get some sort of limited experience when it comes to technical buying. But when you move into Fortune 500 companies, that's where you see category management as a very critical role. So you get covered and captured with industry experts when it comes to IT standards, not only on IT, but civils, hardware, managed services, you name it. So you've got all the category managers who are experienced professionals when it comes to buying and when it comes to market intelligence. And that is what we need in order to leverage our position when it comes to buying any technical services. So for SMEs, because of having that limited information and limited knowledge, it is fundamental to have some sort of a support coming from the IT experts. And you might have noticed in the past, so you've got a lot of consultancy management companies, those who are actually providing a lot of inputs in decision making to the operators, to the vendors, to the buyers, right? And they have integrated IT as in a procurement service just because they see that there is some sort of a gap which can be an added value throughout the supply chain. So what we can do when it moves from where we are today and how the procurement as a service can evolve and add value in the overall supply chain. It gives us a lot of information related to pay as you go. I mean, we understand in past what used to happen when you go and buy any IT services or IT equipment, you're locked for long-term year-on-year contracts, which leaves a lot of challenges for the buyers to negotiate with the service model where it supports the organization is that you can actually buy that particular component or a service what is actually needed for a project, so you don't need to have the complete capex investment to be done when you are buying your technology. So that's where the IT experts and IT procurement experts brings value and works hand in hand with your product team, with your pre-sales team, and your buying organization in order to leverage our position in front of the in front of the technology vendors. Again, just to initiate and highlight the resistance what we get from the executive team in outsourcing procurement, but what can be achieved and where and how it can be achieved, right? We have seen a lot of pressure on procurement. There's been really, I mean, the expectation from the stakeholders are really high, and it has increased the demands for analytics and market intelligence. These are just some of the factors that have made the business to take notice of the procurement service provider capabilities available in the market today and are willing to go beyond and more than the vintage ways of resource and augmentation and business process outsourcing, right? It might be a lot of technical language what I'm trying to highlight over here, but these are the terms basically what we need to use when we are actually pitching an idea to our top management why we need to do what we need to do, right? Companies are also looking at significantly different ways to access procurement expertise from the service providers and looking at flexible, more modular form of services and commercial models so that we can enable growth and greater value can be generated end to end, as in you can also consider this as in a TCO savings, right? And there are multiple layers to it. We need to see how the future trends are moving across the IT procurement sector. Where is the investment opportunity in people? Because you definitely need to have enough resources and the skill set when you're actually working towards category management and what are the importance of category management. If IT is a big spend within your organization, then it is vital for you actually to maintain a category management and have that expertise and experience on your table before you actually go out and try to buy any technology, right? Technology advancement. We have seen this throughout in the past, and especially since the pandemic has affected all of us. This is something which has been a spotlight. It has helped us, and that's how the companies have survived in the past when there were complete shutdowns and lockdowns. And then again, automation, analytics. It's what's important for us to understand is we do a lot of paperwork. We do in procurement, there's a lot of information which is basically either on the spreadsheets or on presentations. But what we are lacking is basically having a complete database where you've got all the analytics, all the automation capabilities, which can be integrated and given as a dashboard view towards the higher management. IT procurement as a service. I'm gonna go slightly on the other side of it, just to give an idea of what it has done when you talk about services, how it has improved other functions. As you've seen, software as a service. Now, what used to happen in the past, when you're going and buying a software, you need to actually buy a complete license for the software, right? And based on my research, what I was able to conduct, software as a service has revolutionized the IT industry. It has. You in the last few years given multiple similar concepts and services areas as well. IT procurement service requires effective and dynamic relationship within the IT industry. Now, if you're not fundamentally day in day out linked with the technology vendors, right? You don't have that much of a leverage when it comes to getting the best price on the table because you're not an attracted client to the vendor. These kinds of challenges are quite common. What's important for us to understand is in the running business right now, and again, due to all the factors, what's going on, we need to bring agility, we need to bring flexibility and speed to the market and focus on. There's been a lot of focus on basically shrinking the IT budgets as well within the organization. But again, the key is to manage the goals and the emergence of all the technology which is happening. Cloud-based technologies are coming up really, really fast, and all the aspects of business and life is basically circling around data centers, IT technology, cloud computing, cloud systems. Everything is evolving towards that aspect. Every business needs the right technology, right? And to ensure its IT infrastructure is optimized and functioning. But the finding where to purchase the right IT procurement service and solution, that's the critical part. You need to basically have that understanding where you're getting the best price and how you can take your IT team away from the valuable strategic efforts. Let them do what they're doing. They're basically technical team. They have a lot of activities to be done, and you wouldn't want to, you know, drag them with you in terms of having all sorts of IT negotiations when it comes to the commercial arrangements. And if it's left to the general internal purchasing department, what happens? They may not have the technical expertise to find the best option for you in the IT environment. And that's where the benefits of IT procurement as a service comes in. What you get when you partner with IT consultants who are basically providing you procurement services, you get partnerships with industry leading technologies. They have influence towards them because they work with different clients, they have different opportunities, and they can definitely bridge that gap what you might have between yourself and the technology what you're trying to buy, or the IT hardware, or the service, or the software and the licensing what you're trying to buy. You can reduce your IT team's time getting quotes, managing the purchasing processes, and let them do what they're actually doing and use your IT procurement services experience in order to leverage your position in front of the vendors. Utilize IT procurement service for subscription and license renewals. Again, they bring a lot of you can get a lot of value addition when you're actually working with experienced procurement professionals, those who are categorized under the IT, because they do bring all sorts of technical vague competencies within the discussions. What happens quite often, what I've noticed as well, is that we don't want to just be an administrative or a clerk in the middle of the chain, right? So you get your IT team sending out a bomb to you, a statement of work, a compliance statement of work, a responsibility matrix, and you just hit forward and send it out to the IT guy. He replies back to you, and then it goes back to the technical team. That, in my view, we lose a lot of opportunities during this process. Just being an intermediator between the technical teams, the requirement, those who have actually generated the requirement and those who are actually fulfilling those requirements, as in the vendors. And if you don't have that critical skill set within your buying organization, then there are opportunities wasted. Uh, you can be you will not be able to leverage any position towards the technical team, inside and outside. You will be losing the opportunity of actually last mile negotiation, where just because of a technical terminology, you will not be able to give the answers to the vendor itself directly. Having an IT service procurement management organization with you, partnered with you, eliminates those all factors, and you actually make sure that you get the best value in terms of making sure that all the deliverables are captured and you have a better price on table, which then definitely helps you to take it further with your technical leads as well. The strategies, what we can implement now, procurement as a function has evolved. We know that. The way it started, the way we are, the way we are progressing, it has evolved. But not rapidly, but it has been moving, and it's becoming more integral part of the organization. Pandemic, economical crisis, war, it has put procurement in spotlight. Organizations and businesses are looking for agility from sources and stakeholders. Those are having direct influence on their business and day-to-day operations. Now, we as in procurement, when we see challenges, I'm sure those who are actively engaged in procurement and has been engaged in the past couple of years, they have seen the importance what the organization has shown to procurement, especially when you've got disruption in the supply chain, when you've got challenges from the subcontractors during the lockdowns, work is going on. You need your partners, your subcontractors to be active. Work did not stop. And that is where procurement got involved. And that is where we added value towards our business and made sure that our organization is actually moving ahead. Yes, it was not within the same pace because there were a lot of challenges, whatever happened. But then again, those were the efforts where you can bring value and show your value towards the organization. Value addition without changing the way we work, it cannot happen. So we cannot fulfill or achieve the way procurement is currently working or was currently working or used to work. There's a very common issue, I think we all can relate to that as well. We always complain that why did procurement get involved at the last mile after all the project managers, all the pre-sales guys, everybody cooked everything with the supplier, and now they are sending it to procurement and they're saying, do your magic, try to get a better price, reduce the cost, and all sorts of negotiations. And the question we ask, why are we at the end and not in the early stages of when the actual requirement started? I think the main question what we need to ask is, first of all, if this is happening, then our team, our project management team, or our stakeholders, they don't see value in procurement. And that is the reason why we are kept at the end. So it starts from us, how we start changing that attitude and how we can actually make them believe and feel that procurement is part of the team and it's not just a cost-cutting department where you can go at the end and try to, negotiate a couple of bucks and reduce the cost. In my experience, again, in the organizations, I've seen a change. When I think the opportunity comes when you have to figure out what was happening at the past and how you can improve and what you can do good or better than what was happening. One of the statements I've received from direct stakeholders is that we've never seen procurement being that involved, or we've never seen procurement work the way procurement works now. And that is where you've proven the point that yes, you've created that value, you've shown your value towards the team. We can't be enemies. And if we are kept like an enemies, then definitely we're not doing our job correctly. There will be many challenges across the road, and there are challenges which we are currently seeing as well, which also means that there are a lot of opportunities. Now, talking about opportunities, you've got, as I've illustrated earlier, elaborated on that. Technology. There is a lot of room in technology. We can definitely look into our current practices and see how we can improve and where we can improve. The second most important thing is the retention of talent. That's the key. And let's not forget, all these opportunities, they work hand in hand. The brand reputation of a company, they work hand in hand. If a company is really famous, everybody wants to work for a bigger organization, and that means that you're retaining your resources because the organization is taking care of the resources. And how is that happening? Because the organization is practicing or using best practices within the organization, which means they have a lot of technology advancement, which you were not able to get where you were before. So these all work together, and it has to be a consolidated approach in order for any opportunity what comes on the table for all of us, right? So to end with, I want to keep some time for the Q&A to make it more interactive. That's why I've captured quite a lot of material in a very short couple of slides as well, in order to make sure that what I've illustrated, whether it is actually capturing and making sense to all of us. And then if you might have any further questions, then we can take it from there. So just to sum it up, we do understand the challenges of outsourcing. We also understand that the IT procurement as a technology is a completely different segment, and IT procurement as a service is completely as an outsourcing requirement, which you can leverage and utilize because there are a lot in the market who can help us making the right decision. And it's all about bringing value to the table. It's all about, it's not only the cost reduction. You might not, it's not the best approach to have the lowest price on the table and then go with that, because quite often it happens that because you've selected the lowest supplier, the ship might not even sail, right? So let's take it, I would take it from here to back to Harry, and I'm open for any questions, any sorts of concerns, what you guys think, where you are facing current challenges, what are the opportunities or challenges you think can be elaborated and illustrated moving forward from here. Thank you very much for all your time. Harry, over to you. And if we have any questions, let's bring them to the table, please.
Sure. Thank you, Zeeshan. Thank you so much. I'm sure there's a lot of thoughts and triggers on the IT as a service. I can see on the chat box, there are definitely lots and lots of thought invokers. But rather than first going directly to the Q&A, couple of quick questions. What is Zeeshan and how did you get into IT procurement?
Right. So I started my career in the telco division, in the telecom sector. And in telecommunication, we have been, I mean, it's all related to technology, communication. What we are doing right now, Zoom, for example, this is all techno, right? My initial start was purely on the telecom sector. And since I moved ahead and we did a lot of back office operation and NOC infrastructures and data centers in our in my role, that exposed me quite a lot with IT vendors, software procurement, IT hardware procurement, dealing with organizations like Dell, HP, Oracle, Cisco, F5. And but again, the advantages I had while I was in the procurement service of these technologies, we had an internal category management, which definitely adds a lot of value. Because if you don't have any particular clarity on the equipment what we're trying to buy, we can easily reach out to our internal category managers and get their insights and inputs on that. So that really helped throughout the journey, since I've been doing this for almost 18 years now.
Great, thanks, Zeeshan. So I've been doing a lot of spares procurement. I'm just giving a typical example. I've been doing a lot of spares procurement, consumer procurement, and I also buy quite a few IT products as a part of my procurement skills. Now, suddenly I want to apply for IT procurement specialist roles, specifically in your teams. What are the key competencies, skill sets? What do you look for me or look in me when you want to take somebody into IT procurement?
I think, unlike not only IT procurement, let's elaborate it a little bit and make it a little bit bigger. So any technical procurement, right? IT is one of the verticals. What is important for me if I want to look into the competencies of the candidate is that the technical background. Uh, Me myself, I've been engaged in different categories of procuring services. I've been doing managed services. I've been doing telecommunication rollouts. I've been doing IT services, data centers. The key fundamental is we don't we need to be tech savvy. That's an important point. You cannot be an just an administrative and expect to have that technical background. So the importance of learning comes throughout our journey in procurement, and I think the opportunities are always in front of us. Now, the most important segment what I would want to have in Harry, let's say, right, is a bit know-how on the technical skill set of the category which I'm trying to hire a candidate, right? It's not only about we all talk about this, and I'm going to highlight that procurement as a job, um, regardless of any industry or category, it is the same process. But no, yes, it is the same process, but it has a different technical skill set requirement, and that is an important takeaway. So if you're in FMCG industry, if you're in telecom ICT industry, and if you're into oil and gas industry, right? So you need to have that technical background, a bit of a technical skill set, understanding of the components, so you can speak the language of the supplier. That's the key takeaway. If the supplier believes or feels that the buyer on the other side does not understand the technical, and they will be able to pick it up very quickly, they will leverage that situation and that time. So it's important for us to have that technical skill of that category, not only
Sure.
IT. I'm saying in
Thanks.
general.
Thank you, Zeeshan. Just before moving to the Q&A, the last question, we often talk about it's very easy, just go ahead and coordinate with your end users, coordinate with finance, coordinate with your suppliers. We keep talking about this. How do we actually, going back to your PRAS, whatever you showed, how does a buyer, specifically in IT category, how do we do this coordination? Where do we begin it from?
So I'll give you my personal experience on that. So definitely, I get a lot of IT procurement requirements from my stakeholders, right? The first thing I try to understand is technically, once we get the equipment and the tool. So your first go-to person is your project manager, or not even a project manager, the technical advisor or the technical team. That's where you start with, in order to understand what this product or service going to bring to the table. Is it a direct procurement, or it is an indirect procurement? Is it something being sold to the end customer, or is it something to be to be used internally for the operations what we are maintaining or running. That's where we start. That's where I particularly start with. And then from there, I go to the financial guys in order to understand what are the budgets available for that. How much do we have in the bucket? What we have utilized and what we have remained, what is remaining with us, in order to make sure that do we have enough budget and whether it's a no-brainer that we don't have enough in the bucket and we just go and do fishing in the market, and then at the end of the day we're wasting time. Not only our time, but everybody's time, even the suppliers at the end of the day. So it's good to have that. I must say that green light that go and talk to the stakeholders, because that adds a lot of values and a lot of learning for us. And this is my personal experience in terms of I never expect that I receive an SOW and just without even talking to the stakeholders, I go and do publish an RFP. That's completely a no-brainer, because you would never get the value in that. You need to know what you're getting into.
Thank you, Zeeshan. When you say you should know what you're getting at, so that brings the next question. We talk about terms of reference, we talk about SLAs, and we also talk about performances. How do we align all of these together? That's one part. And second thing is in IT procurement, when we do change the service providers, for example, there's always the challenge of getting the new pricing. Again, coming back to mapping of services, etc. So how do we do this? How do we find out the right price when we change a service provider with a new service provider coming in with a different price bracket?
And that's very common because they need to break the market, right? They need to get in. So, but the thing what we need to understand is the low price is not the right price always, right? That's always a challenge what most of the organizations face as well. So starting from the performance and SLAs and KPIs, I think what's important for all of us to make sure and keep our eyes open is that we have clear mechanisms in our contract. We do have, I've seen this quite a lot, that we will just focus on the deliverable in terms of the BOM or the BOQ, what we are getting from the internal stakeholders and then passing it on to the suppliers. But we don't see what happens, or we don't care, or we don't look into or provide importance to the SLAs and KPIs. One of the important one, especially in IT procurement, there is a term called service credits, right? And that takes it down to the key milestones or key deliverables, what the supplier needs to deliver to us. And that connects with performance. So I think in order to map the commercial part, you've already locked it down. In order to map your capability and judge the performance of the supplier, the two key elements of your contract must be your service credits, which is basically the response time in terms of any major issue or minor issue taking place in your environment, and followed by your governance process. How do you manage that, which connects with your performance evaluation? Now, normally what used to happen in one of my projects, what we used to do is once we have locked a project for 1 year or we have signed a contract for a year, what's important is to map their performance, because when you're at the time of renewal, and when the example you gave just now, Harry, about another supplier comes with a lower price, it depends on how your TCO is weighted, how much you've given the weight to the commercial and how much you've given the weight to the technical and performance evaluation. That's important. If your liability between yourself and your end customer is really great, it's really high, then I believe the weight on the technical and commercial technical evaluation has to be higher than the commercial. And that would be the mapping, how I would interrelate the commercial, the technical, the performance all together in order to make the right decision the next year or year on year, bringing an improvement and building that competition within the market.
Great. Thank you, Zeeshan. Going back to an SME now. I am an SME and I'm doing quite extensively well, but I'm now losing customers because I'm not able to focus. So I want to implement the IT automation. If I am a buyer, I would be looking at a lot of things as a checklist. But you are an expert, you can quickly look at the proposals and in a minute you can say which is good, bad. So if I want to become like you, what is the right combination, let's say, between warranty, softwares, IP rights? What are the IT service providers supposed to give us? And remember, if I'm an SME, I also have a price conscious control.
Definitely. I think what would be important, I like the fact when you mentioned that you're losing customers because of price or because of performance.
No, because there's no structured IT digitalization available with me. Now I want to do automations. So when I get into automations, there are so many softwares, there are so many service providers. What should I be looking for at an optimal cost? What should be some of the main features? And how do I get the right combination so that I can get the right automation? I don't want out of the special, lots of special skill sets in that, but then I want a simple, proper automation for my SME.
Yeah, I think one of the key inputs what can happen is, see, any customer would want to have a clarity in the progress of the project, what they're doing, right? And gone are the days when we always used to use spreadsheets for that. What an IT automation or IT tool brings on the table basically is it it comprises all the data. It comprises all the key points, what our deliverables are towards the end customer. I must say, I would say that the most important point, what we need to understand first is what is our deliverables towards the customer and how the market around us. I'm an SME, as you mentioned, I'm an SME, and there are other SMEs, those who are providing similar services to the customer. So either they have spoiled the customer by showing them something really advanced. So that became a challenge for us because we are not doing what they're doing. So the governance part and the talking about the tool, right? It has to be looked at in terms of what value it brings on the table for the end customer. Does it gives the right information? We are actually exploring one of the tools as we speak. It's a question which you asked me what I'm currently doing for one of our customers, right? So we are exploring some opportunities in terms of how do we consolidate all the information? How do we reduce the number of Excel files what we are sharing with the supply with the end customers, but try to give them a very pictorial dashboard operational view of where we stand, where we were, and how we are headed to where we want to be, right? It's more of the ease of information sharing rather than the complexity of data sharing. I hope I answered the question. So
True.
that's how it needs to be looked at, and we are actually exploring similar domains for one of our customers in our projects.
True. Okay. Zeeshan, I'll put the same question in a different way. I don't know whether I'll get the answer. If I am an
Go ahead.
SME, is there a procurement buyer to buyer? Is there a price benchmark? If I'm starting an automation, is there a price benchmark which I should know? How do I know that this is the right price? Is it linked to, let's say,
Yeah, I, I,
turnover?
I think if you're planning to do an internal automation, there might not be a direct price benchmark for that because if you're you as an SME and I as an SME probably have a different approach, right? Now we are going in one of our internal automation process right now, but we're using some of the modules from the complete program itself. So it purely depends on how much time you can save from unautomated activities versus after having that automation and how much control you can bring in your sourcing process. I have not witnessed and seen any benchmark when it comes. Rather, the value it brings. I mean, benchmark when I mean benchmark on the commercial, but it's more of a value and the integration of the technology brings on the table.
Okay, great. Uh, okay, now there is somebody who has asked a question on battle of forms. Initially, I thought it may not be relevant, but I think it's a good question. If you look at when you try to negotiate or discuss on software additional value addition points, software services, etc., and there's a lot of discussions that go to and fro. Is there any experience that you have, or you have any kind of advices how to manage battle of forms when it comes to software procurement?
Not typically on the software procurement, but I can shed some light on that. So I think when it comes to softwares and licenses, those are straightaway pricing sheets, which normally the vendors they use, right? They have standard price books. They come up with they're very rigid when it comes to when we talk about negotiating and discounts from them. One of the suggestions could be that you can debate and work on duration of your software licenses, how long you can stick with that vendor when it comes to the software procuring. The challenging part for the seller would be that how long would you stick with their software and whether you will not replace them after using their software for certain time. And it's the contract duration what can actually bring some value in during your negotiations. And the most important part would be having an internal software understanding. So again, your internal teams is asking for a software to be deployed. What value does it bring to us? How do we evaluate that value? Those informations are critical for all of us to understand before we get on the table with the seller or with the organization or the software management company. In my experience, time has always given us that leverage. So if we commit to them for a longer duration, we do get some value benefits from them in terms of commercials as well.
Okay, thanks, Zeeshan. This is a question totally, I understand nothing of this, but it's an IT question. So what is your practice on the source code? Should the source code be a bespoke solution or be it a vendor's IP, or should the buyer company should have an IP for the same?
Not necessary. Now, I think it's a good question. It's a bit technical.
Just
But
one thing, Zeeshan, for the people who do not understand, for including me. So what's a source code and what are we trying to understand here?
I think it's more related to the IP, having an IP towards
Okay.
the software which is being implemented or bought. So there might be a lot of applications what an organization needs specifically for their project, which we don't allow the party who is making that project to resell to anybody else.
Okay.
So specific for your project, right? And generally it happens when we are actually selling a solution, not a hardware only to the customer, right? Where you need to add your applications, where you're monitoring your information flow, where you're integrating that application with your own device. So in that scenario, I would not want anybody else, my competition, let's say, to have any hands-on to that application because that's a fundamental leverage what I have against any other competition in the market. So it depends on the software or application company, those who are actually building that application for us. If it's an off-the-shelf item, definitely you cannot restrict them. And if it's not, and if it is individually prepared for you, then definitely there will be a complete workshops done with them. Understanding has to be there. And of course, at the end of the day, you will not be able, you have to restrict them to basically resell it to anybody else. This happens at a larger scale. This does not happen on a very SME level, I must say. It is purely based on so let's suppose if you have an Android application on your phone, right? And it'll work with all the Android devices. But if you have a completely different operating system and you want to have a specific application which is only operating on your operating system, and you restrict the seller or the app developer to resell it to anybody else. Are you there, Harry?
No,
I think you're
sorry, I
on
was
mute.
on mute, sorry. So
Yeah.
just last two questions, I'll take extra 5 minutes. The question is asked specifically from an SME, I think, organization. His question, anonymous question is, what are the risks of implementing an automation? So is there anything that I should be careful about from the software or the automation supplier? Any cyber hacks or anything that he is hiding in the software? What should I be careful about when I implement? What are the risks?
I think you already highlighted that is. So one of the biggest risks when you're actually talking about automation and digitization or having an application in your system is the cyber threats. Now, definitely there has to be a complete thorough governance process has to be in place. You need to understand how you are protected when you are actually integrating any third party within your own internal platform. I have seen organizations where they do learn from the experts outside, and then they develop their in-house solutions in order to integrate that within their own platform. And I've also worked with organizations and seen organizations where they keep on maintaining the third party, and the third parties are integrated within their structure and platforms. So the biggest threats nowadays, and which is a very crucial one, is the cyber threat. And how to mitigate that threat is basically one of the things what we do internally is to know the background of the organization. It's riskier to work with smaller ERP or software application service providers because either they don't have that footprint or they don't have that visibility, and you also don't have that much of visibility about their whereabouts. It is always recommended to work with or to have automation integrated within your organization platform through known organizations. That is one of the ways where you can protect yourself and make sure, because they'll have their own set of rules which they have developed with time after witnessing a lot of issues and threats with what they have practiced in the early days when they've developed their application. So the way to mitigate that is avoid working with somebody you don't know, and work with people those who are actually strong in their domain in order to avoid any issues what might come later down the line.
Great, thanks, Zeeshan. Just one last question is, what are the courses you would recommend for a person to get into IT procurement, if there are any specific courses that you recommend?
I've not done any.
Okay, great.
So, but that does not mean that we should not try and put ourselves into any technical space. But again, when you get yourself into course, there are different. It's a very big and wide industry. I would recommend CIPS to be the basics as a course module for any procurement professional who wants to improve his career or her career in the field, and then take any opportunity that comes during your profession, during your practice, to learn more. I think the means of information nowadays is endless to us. Internet, Google, research on information. If you want to talk, if you want to know the difference between SSD and HDS systems, just a Google search will give you a very basic distinction between the two. So learning on the go has been my approach so far, but you've actually put a thought in my head in actually planning to go and look into some IT courses as well in future.
Thank you, Zeeshan. I think we have a couple of more questions. What I would do is, I'm just sending an email ID on the, 1 second, hold on, just 1 second. So members who have questions, just shoot out these questions on this. I will make sure that I get the answers from Zeeshan and we can share it as part of the acknowledgement and feedback to all the audience who have been here. Thank you once again, Zeeshan. This has been definitely a lot of encouraging session in terms of insightfulness. Personally, for me also, I'm trying to learn quite a few new things in IT procurement. But having said that, our procurement, again, this is my end words, our procurement and our profession is definitely on the high. It's very important that we practice what we listen, what we read, what we experience, and try and become more and more enhanced. It is important that we have that ability to convince our end users, our suppliers, with a very strong and a healthy knowledge-based arguments rather than talking on the price or the value aspect. So that is definitely the end thing. And whoever is in procurement, please feel free, please feel proud of the fact that you are in procurement and you are enabling the organizations. That would be my last words. Thank you once again, Zeeshan, for this engaging and very insightful sessions. Whoever is on the call, audiences, please feel free to raise your thoughts and questions on the email ID I shared, and we would be more than happy to feedback any and all of your queries. With that, I end this session. Thank you once again, Zeeshan, and thank you, QDB and the Qatar branch team for setting up such a series of webinars, specifically catering to the world of our profession. Thanks, Zeeshan, and wishing all the very best to everybody.
Thank you for the audience, and thank you, Harry, for all the arrangements. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. You have a good day ahead.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.